You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Paranormal Pride. We will visit only with the best investigators, location owners, demonologists, researchers, inventors, authors, mediums, psychics, and enthusiasts. Anyone with a love or interest in the paranormal, the supernatural, or the unexplained will be meeting here on Mondays at 8 p.m., 7 Central. Welcome to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore. I hope everybody out there is staying nice and toasty because I know the storm system is hitting almost everybody. So please make sure you have a nice warm drink tonight or something that will make you warm to get through this evening. Before we get started tonight, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who sent prayers and condolences, whether it was on Facebook or through Messenger or through text, to Ron and his family, and to the memorial at Bowie Funeral Home in St. Louis for Ron's dad. We really appreciate that. It was a difficult time for all of us, and maybe someday I'll tell you what I saw during that, because it was the first time I ever witnessed someone die, but I don't want to talk about it at this point. But thank you guys so much for that. That really helped us. And talking about that, we had a guy, Kerry Mann. He made this wonderful, I'm going to call it a banner, because he makes them for my shows every now and then. But he made this graphic with Ron's dad, with the sun coming through and the flag and a rest in peace. And it was really very nice of him to do. He's in the hospital right now, and I want everybody to say a prayer for him because he's not doing very well, and I'm very worried about him. They're doing tests on him tonight, so hopefully we'll know something soon. And if you guys recall, I had on J.C. Phillips, the Ozark Bushman, a couple months ago. It's his uncle, so it is somebody that we all should be, we know a little bit about. Kerry lives down in Springfield, Missouri, and like I said, please say a prayer for him and keep him in your prayers until whenever. I just want to make sure that he gets through this. So thank you all for that. So now on to a lighter subject, because I could sit here and be depressed all day. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to do Frank justice. So my guest tonight is Frank Bennett. He is an author of a book called The Encounter with the Aberdeen Wild Man, A True Story, and another book, which is, I've read part of it. I haven't finished yet, A Ghost in Philadelphia by Frank Bennett as well. You guys are going to enjoy these books, especially A Ghost in Philadelphia if you're politically inclined. If you're not politically inclined, you're probably not going to like it very much. But I like it, and Ron likes it too. So check those out on Amazon, or can you get these through your webpage, Frank?
Yes.
So I will post that webpage in the chat room here in a few minutes. But I met Frank in a really weird circumstance. He was at a Paracon, and when I say Paracon, that's a loose term for the event. It was a teeny tiny Paracon. I have to go with Frank. Was it the smallest Paracon you'd ever been to?
No, the smallest Paracon I've ever been to was in a closet in a private discussion with a psychic medium. Okay. Well, this one was probably right next to that. I think there was like the Kansas City Paracon at that time might have had, 12, 15 tables. The speakers were all in the same room with the tables, so you couldn't talk to the people at the tables without talking over the speaker. So, but what was interesting is he was 2 tables behind me. My back was to him, his back was to me. I heard him talking to someone, and you can't tell from his voice that he's got a Baltimore accent. And I know I should say Maryland, but no, it's Baltimore.
And all of us, I don't say it that way, neither do you. That's what's funny. And he started to say something, and he said something about Baltimore, and I perked up, and I walked over, and I just sat down, and we started talking, and we've been friends ever since. The other thing that got me was in his book, the first thing he talks about in the book, Encounter with the Aberdeen Wild Man, he's going through this, and he starts talking about Geno's, and it's like anybody that knows anything in Maryland, Geno's was the place to go. And that was my favorite restaurant. I talk about it all the time. And so I was hooked instantly on his book. And whether it meant anything else to anybody else, it meant something to me. And then, of course, Aberdeen is huge. The Aberdeen Proving Grounds are huge out there. But every place that he talks about in this book has personal meaning to me. I know something about the area, something that means something to me. So because of that, Frank and I have become fast friends. Enough so to where he said, "Hey, I'm going to Eureka Springs, Arkansas." And I was like, that's only technically 4.5 hours away, but in the twisty, turny, back, kiss my butt roads down there, it turns out to be about 5-hour drive. And
I think it's actually named Kiss My Butt Highway.
Oh yeah, it's I call it something else, but it's basically when you're going around these turns, you can only go like 10 miles an hour on these turns, and you see the back end of your car when you're turning. And so we drove down there just to see him and Kat. Kat Hobson happened to be down there too. I was trying to get them together. It didn't happen. Same. They were at the same UFO conference, the Ozark. I don't even remember what it's called now. But they were at the same conference, and they didn't even get to meet each other. But I saw both of them, so I was happy. So it was just kind of weird. So that tells you that we're close enough to where we're going to drive 5 hours to see him. So this is his second time that I've talked to him on the radio, and so hopefully you guys have some interesting questions. I haven't even brought up. I couldn't even see the chat room. But Frank, what got you into writing?
Well, thank you for having me back for a second time. At the moment, I'm witnessing my cats run into my room as if, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't just knock over something precious that belongs to you. We're totally innocent.
Well, you know, you moved those cats all the way from Florida with you, so...
Yeah, and they'll get me for it, too, let me tell you. Because, let me tell you, up here in Ohio, everybody is looking for their little version of global warming, too, and it ain't happening.
Nope.
Anyways, moving right along.
What
got me... I say again?
It ain't happening here either.
It ain't happening there either, man. What got me into writing is that I tried it when I was very young, and I was no good at it. I wrote what I told actress Morgan Brittany was a little more than crap, and I threw it all away. And I hung it up, and I worked regular jobs like the rest of you all for a long time. And like I said in the book, I have a lot of personal experiences with strange, bizarre spirit entities, dark entities, things like that. Also, the encounter with the wild man himself, which was a humanoid creature I encountered. It looked human, but it wasn't human. And other strange creatures of the woods. And, of course, my UFO encounters as well. I carried these around with me for a long, long time because, let's face it, and other people involved in the paranormal who ghost hunt and all that will tell you, you have an experience with something, you encounter something, and it's traumatic. Happened to me over and over again, but you see, life goes on. And if it doesn't happen with regularity, it ends up in your rearview mirror, and you tend to kind of put it behind you. And many years later, come around the 2000s, everybody was starting to get nuts about the paranormal again. And thank God for YouTube, because on YouTube, people were posting videos of things they've seen, creatures in the forest and things like that. And, like a lot of people are doing right now, I looked at some of these and thought, well, now, wait a minute, I saw something like that. And as time went by, I started kind of putting together, I was working demolition at the time. I was a contractor, traveling various states, various jobs. And from time to time, I would have these snippets of thoughts and I would write them down at the end of the day and put them away somewhere. And come around 2014, I had enough to make a book out of, and that's what led to Encounter with the Aberdeen Wild Man, a true story.
Well, like I said, I thought it was a really interesting book because you go into a lot of different crypto monsters and things like that. And then you also talk a little bit about the paranormal as well. And there was a lot of things that you said that really really got to me. Like, we talked about some, I can't even remember what we talked about the last time, because we've talked about so many strange things in the past. I like this one thing that you wrote, and it was called "Debunking is Someone Else's Opinion, Not a Matter of Fact." I thought that was a interesting comment to make, because a lot of people will sit there and go over your stuff and say, no, that's not what you saw. And you're going, no, this is what I saw. You can debunk it all you want, but this is what I saw. So I don't know what made you come up with that comment, but I can see where it rings true for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like the Wild Man. How cold is it right there in Kansas City?
Right now it's about 24, feels like 10.
Okay. It's about 6 degrees here in Ohio, where I live at. It was on a day like today, as cold as it is now, when I encountered the Wild Man out in the marshes of the Chesapeake Bay back in 1980, when I was, younger, prettier, and still dumb as a brick. I was a kid, but, I had more going for me back then. And when I tell people about it and the circumstances, not having been there, nobody can relate to it, and they're very dismissive. It wasn't, people who have seen the same similar things are the only ones who can even relate to such a thing happening. At the show in Fort Myers I just came back from, which is slightly warmer, by the way. Thank you.
I would think
I
so.
had a man come to my table, lives in New Jersey. I almost said Jersey. Sorry, guys. And he reported to me citing a Bigfoot, a red-haired Bigfoot, on railroad tracks going through the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, which, as everybody knows, the Pine Barrens is the habitat of the Jersey Devil.
Right.
There are sporadic sightings of Sasquatch in the Pine Barrens. This one is amazing. It's the first one I've heard of that's actually red. And he said he saw this standing on the railroad tracks staring at him. And he watched it literally leap from one side of the railroad tracks to another. And, this is how you relate to people, because I used to work on the railroad way back in the 1980s. It was one of my first demolition jobs, and I know what the distance is from one side of a railroad track bed to another, and no human can do this. He and I instantly related. So you go to try to describe this to people who have never worked on a railroad, never seen a Sasquatch, especially a red one, who really just don't get out much, and it just flies right over their heads. But he and I related because we had similar experience.
Wow. I mean, that I could see where that would bond you, because that's one of those things, like when you witness something together, it does bond you. I mean, no matter what it is, if it's a life-changing experience anyway, like over the weekend was the anniversary, or was it today? I don't remember which one it was, but the space shuttle Columbia exploded.
Challenger
exploded. Yeah. What was it? 1986. Most of us, if we weren't working, we probably had the TV on and saw it, because it happened early enough in the morning in the central time zone and the other time zones to see it. But if you were on the East Coast, more than likely you were already at work and didn't see it. I remember seeing it before I went to work that day, watching it on, I was getting ready to work and watch it. But, if you were talking to anybody about it that day, you probably bonded over something. And plus, I think I also worked in a school that ended up being named after the teacher.
Sally Ride.
Yeah. So I remember later on in life, I remember talking about that to my kids when we went there to babysit for church.